Hi everyone, Krista Cowan here with another episode of The Barefoot Genealogist. It is time for our monthly edition of What's New at Ancestry. This is for March 2017. Now I am on the road this week on a speaking tour, so today we're going to be short and sweet with some of the events and the new content that has come out. And then next week there will not be a new video. I'll be returning home and the timing just doesn't work out for that. So we will resume our regular Tuesday video schedule on March 21st. Let's go ahead and dive in and start right off with upcoming events. So the National Genealogical Conference is in Raleigh, North Carolina this year. It is the 10th through the 13th of May. And if you live in or around Raleigh, we would strongly encourage you to come. If you don't want to sign up, if you live in Raleigh or close to Raleigh and don't want to sign up for classes, you can still come any day that week for the exhibit hall. The exhibit hall is always free. The vendors are all there, including Ancestry. There's oftentimes little mini classes or demos being held in the demo hall, and that is free. Now, if you live a little further away, you might want to consider purchasing a ticket to the conference. You can find that by just doing an internet search for the National Genealogical Society 2017 conference, and you can fill out your registration, get information about discounted hotels there. The Genealogy Jamboree is held every year in June in Burbank, California. This year it's from the 9th to the 11th of June. That first day is kind of a bonus day, so you can purchase the regular part of the conference, the 9th through the 11th, or you can add on the 8th. The 8th is an entire day dedicated to DNA. And then the 9th through the 11th is the regular conference. Again, exhibit hall is free, so if you live in the area, come on down and spend some time with us. But if not, please come spend the week with us or the weekend with us at that conference. It's one of my favorite events of the year. The International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies annual conference will be in Orlando, Florida this year, from the 23rd through the 28th of July. And that is always a high energy, long days, lots of learning opportunities conference. I'm looking forward to attending that as well. And then kind of to round out the national conference scene, the Federation of Genealogical Societies annual conference this year is the 30th of August through the 2nd of September in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Again, if you're local, come on down. The exhibit halls at most of these events are free, and then the classes are what you register for. And you can usually, typically, if you check out the websites for the different events, sometimes you can register for a single day pass. Maybe you live close enough that you can come in just for the day, or you can register for a full conference event pass that gets you through to all of the events. Now, I do want to highlight a website. Conferencekeeper.org has some really great information about events happening all over the country and all over the world as they pertain to genealogy. So if we come here to their website and you click on calendar or conferences or locations, there's lots of different ways to browse the information available here. But this is going to have genealogy conferences, events, tours, cruises, all of the different kinds of ways that genealogists get together to learn and to network. And what you're going to discover as you start to work your way through this list is that there are events literally happening everywhere, and they're happening all of the time. And so you can see here, once this page loads, you can see here that they've got some great feeds about things that are happening locally as people are live tweeting or interacting at events. You can follow along there, or you can find the complete list of events, and there's lots of different ways to filter that. But you can see here, Florida, Pennsylvania, Indiana, wherever you happen to be in the country, Virginia, also in Birmingham, England. The big Who Do You Think You Are live conference is coming up next month. Kansas, Arizona, Canada, Arkansas, the Family History Conference of Northwest Arkansas is happening April 22nd. And the only reason I paused to point that out is because I happen to be the keynote speaker at that event. So if you live in Northwest Arkansas, you might want to join us for that. So conferencekeeper.org, just a really great way to keep on top of smaller events at a state or local level that might be happening outside of the national events that I try to highlight every month. Okay, let's talk about content. Ancestry has added more than 10 million records this month. And really, I just want to highlight two sets of records. This first set of records, the Lutheran baptisms, marriages, and burials. Now, there's actually, as you can see there, 5 different databases. The databases for German records typically are broken out by region. And one of the reasons for that is that Germany didn't become a unified country until, I believe it was 1867. So the idea that, if your family's from Germany, that's great, but you really need to know where in Germany your family was from in order to take advantage of the research and the records. So that's why whenever people are researching their immigrant ancestors, I always encourage them to make sure that they have collected every single possible record in the U.S. or Canada or Australia, wherever the person immigrated from Germany to, so that they can make sure that they have a general idea or a specific idea, wherever possible, of where in Germany they happened to be from. So you can see here, we've got records dating back to the 1500s. Some of them go through the 1900s. Again, these are Lutheran baptisms, marriages, and burials for the regions of Hanover, Saxony, Rhineland, Thuringia, Berlin, and Spandau. And if we come over here to the site, a couple of things I just want to point out. One is you'll notice there is no browse box here. What that means is that Ancestry has only obtained access to the indexes for these records, not the images. The other thing I want to point out is that these records are in German. They are German records. However, because they are just indexes, Ancestry is able to translate the field names. And so you'll see here, like, for example, event type, and while the event type is written in German, but Ancestry has translated that where possible. Now, some of the source information will still be in German, and so you're going to want to find a translation service. I personally use Google Translate to be able to help you identify maybe some English spellings of some of these things. I use a lot of mapping programs to try to locate. In 1689, the geopolitical landscape was very different. So where was this specific place located in 1689, so that I'm not looking at places that might have the same name 200, 300 years later, but be in an entirely different location. So that's just one of the cautions as you work with these records. Again, they are in German. The place names, especially as you get older in the records, may have changed over time. Remember, these records were recorded at that time, and so the location will be based on what it was at the time that that event occurred. So really great records there. The second set of records, or the final set of records that I want to just briefly mention today, is the Pennsylvania slave records. They date from 1780 to 1834. Now, if you watched the video that I did last week about documenting the slaveholders and the enslaved in your family trees, you'll know that that is a reality, unfortunately, of those of us who have deep roots here in the United States, is that slavery was an institution here in this country. One of the challenges for our Black friends and family is that sometimes the records are not as extensive and available to them as they are to those of us who are white. And so anytime new records come online that will enable them to discover more about their family history, I just think it's such a significant thing. And so the Pennsylvania County slave records, let me just give you a brief understanding of why these records exist. In 1780, the state of Pennsylvania passed a law. There was a law passed essentially that was designed to phase out slavery in Pennsylvania. And it wasn't an immediate ending of slavery. Essentially, what the law stated was that anyone who was born a slave prior to 1780 would continue to be enslaved for life. Anyone that was born to an enslaved mother after 1780 would be an indentured servant until they reached the age of 28, at which time they would receive their freedom. So, in order to administer that law, the state of Pennsylvania required that if you had slaves in 1780, you had to register them by a certain date that year. And if you did not, those slaves gained their freedom. And so what you'll find in these county slave records, and you'll notice over here there is a browse box, so there are images, and you'll notice that the browse is by county because these records were, this registration occurred at a county level. So we've got these county records where slaveholders had to go and register their slaves prior to that date in 1780 in order for their slaves to remain slaves. And if they did not, those slaves became free. Then the rest of the records from 1780 to 1834 here was any time a child was born to a slave mother, they had to register the birth of that child because that child was not born a slave. They were born an indentured servant, and they gained their freedom at the age of 28. And so these records are hugely valuable because they have names and birth dates and parents' names, and like there's so much information in here. And so I've spent some time with these records, and they're just a really rich source of information that can take the ancestry of our Black friends and family back beyond what traditionally they can find records readily for. So Pennsylvania County slave records from 1780 to 1834, and you can search by the name of the slave holder or the name of the slave and find those records. So if you have ancestors who were slave holders in Pennsylvania, then you might also find some information about them in those records. Well, I told you it was going to be short and sweet today. Hopefully that was an interesting enough set of it. There are other new records that have come out this month, but those German Lutheran records were probably the largest set of records that were released, and that Pennsylvania County slave records were, to me, one of the most interesting collections that was released this past month. So if you have any suggestions for topics for future videos, you can email me at ask@ancestry.com. I am going to be putting together the video calendar for the rest of March and for all of April, and would love to have your suggestions as I do that. Until next time, this is Krista Cowan. Have fun climbing your family tree.